Humanity sets the agenda.
The time is just gone 18 minutes past 9 a.m. as we continue with the show this morning, news and views it is. And yesterday we learned about Madeline Albright, the former U.S. Secretary of State. She was under the Bill Clinton administration. She died at the age of 84. And according to her family, she passed away from cancer. But the question is, who was Madeline Albright? And we joined this morning on the line by a board member for Africa for Palestine. We're joined by Bram Hanekom. Bram, good morning to you. And as always, welcome. We appreciate your time with us here on Salam Media.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes, yesterday we've learned about Madeline Albright passing away. And the question is, who was Madeline Albright? And when her announcement came through, we've seen an outpouring of tributes. We've seen many people saying they had fond memories. But at the same time, there was sharp criticism, particularly around the infamous statement that she had made regarding the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children, Bram.
No, absolutely. I think that we all respect the dead. I think it's human and important that we respect the dead. It's what we do. But we mustn't be dishonest and rosy or misrepresent the legacy of anybody. And I think that there's no doubt in our mind as Afro-Palestine and as progressive people in South Africa that she has much blood on her hand. Being a leader of the imperialist regime at the time where so many horrific things happened and transpired directly underneath the U.S. government makes her no hero and definitely no saint.
Well, definitely. And I think the key issue here is, with the statement that she had made, and she said it was worth it. Now, we're talking about 500,000 Iraqi children. And this was as a result of US led sanctions. And for someone obviously to make a statement of that nature, to say it was worth it. And later on in life, I believe she said she regretted making the statement. But the fact of the matter is, this contributed to a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of desperation in Iraq. And particularly when we're talking about children, we're talking of little children, we're talking about babies, innocent Iraqi children, Bram.
Absolutely. I mean, there's Iraq, and you've very clearly articulated her atrocious involvement there. There's also what happened in Rwanda, where there was a genocide, and she was in charge at the time, leading the U.S. foreign policy. And the U.S. completely objected and stopped any UN intervention to stop the massacre that transpired there, to stop the genocide in Rwanda. The United States, under her guidance, did nothing and did not help at all to stop that horrific murder there. Then there's Palestine. The hypocrisy of supporting sanctions on countries like Russia or Iraq, as you mentioned, and the interference and intervention, and then literally supporting Israel and saying silly things like sanctions don't work, or also saying that it should be illegal in the United States for boycotting or organizations promoting the boycott of Israel, just shows how dishonest not just she is, but America is. And she was entrenched in that system. She was one of the elders in that system. And she clearly was completely married to the imperialist view that if you were white and you were American and you were Christian or Jewish, you had a right to rights and privileges and basic human respect that other people who are not like you did not have. And this, to me, is her legacy.
Exactly. And I think in talking about her legacy, there are those obviously who have paid tribute and have fond memories of her. And just to consider that, looking at the background and where Madeline Albright had actually come from, and we know that she was a child of Czech immigrants. They fled from the Nazis as well. So, we're talking about someone who was oppressed, who became an oppressor later in life, Bram.
No, absolutely. I think, there's a lot of focus on the fact that she happened to have been a woman, the first foreign secretary of state for the US. Uh, but that's absolute nonsense, because Margaret Thatcher was a woman, as we all know, and Margaret Thatcher, along with Reagan, openly supported the
Yes, I think we have lost Bram Hanekom there for a
Can you
few
hear me now?
seconds.
Hello?
Yes, we can. We can continue, Bram.
Can you hear me now? Okay, okay. No, I was saying the fact that she's a woman is really a red herring and irrelevant, because Margaret Thatcher was also a woman, and we never sung the praise of Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, she clearly had a direct link to our oppression in South Africa and the apartheid regime. So the fact that this woman was the first woman in that position makes her no less an evil than had it been a man. In fact, if women are meant to be more compassionate and caring about human rights, we would have expected her to care about the children of Iraq and the children of Rwanda and the children of the Palestinian people as well.
Yes, and also, considering what is happening at this point in time with regard to Russia and the Ukraine, and obviously, when one looks at the West, when one looks at NATO, when one looks at the United States of America, and with people like Madeleine Albright that were involved during the time, and now looking at the West, seeing it as a chance for redemption over what they had basically done in Iraq, and that is the reason why we see the likes of Western Europe and the United States of America supported by many around the world on the whole Russian-Ukraine issue, Bram.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very clear that there are two worlds, and even the Joe Bidens and the current leaders, they behave in a way that Donald Trump also behaved, a way where you will say one thing with a straight face on one side and another thing with a straight face on the other side. But if you're honest, they both are directly opposite. When it comes to Israel, Palestine, you're going to say it's complicated. You're actually going to fund what Israel's doing to the Palestinian people, knowing full well that they are violating many, many international laws, and that the state of Israel is guilty of war crimes, including the use of white phosphorus cluster bombs, which by no means are targeted weaponry. The destroying of hospitals and orphanages and so on happened and happens all the time to Palestinian people by Israel. And the US is not only allowing it or turning a blind eye, they're actually paying for it, they're funding it. So that's the one United States of America, which Joe Biden and Trump, etc., were very supportive of. The other United States of America is the one that says, oh, Russia is violating human rights. They've bombed a hospital. We need to sanction them, boycott them. We must send money to the Ukrainians. Every citizen or person who can carry a gun in Ukraine must be allowed to defend their sovereignty and their land and their nationhood. They're not called terrorists like the US call Hamas. So we're seeing this incredible hypocrisy. And the only conclusion one can make is that there are indeed two worlds. There's the world of darker people, and there's the world of lighter people. There's the world of the Christians and the Jews, and there's a world of the Islamic nations, and the American leaders, like the woman who just passed away now. They have a respect for the white Christian Jewish world, and they have very little regard for people who are not from the same religion or race grouping.
Well, Bram, thank you very much for that. And as always, we appreciate you taking time out, talking to us here on Salam Media. We wish you all the best, and please take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thank you so much.
Bram Hanekom, board member for Africa for Palestine, this morning, looking at the legacy of Madeline Albright, who was famous for saying that the death of 500,000 Iraqi kids was worth it, and also looking at her involvement over the years. And looking at Rwanda, for instance, the Rwandan genocide, and in 2016, she spoke about her actions as far as Rwanda is concerned, where when she was ambassador to the United Nations, she proposed that the United States take the lead in pushing to remove most of the UN peacekeeping force in Rwanda. And several days later, most of the UN force was withdrawn, and the situation quickly got to a situation where there was a genocide, and something like 800,000 people were killed in a matter of 100 days. And she said that this was her greatest regret from that time. But 800,000 deaths later, 500,000 Iraqi children, and there was just so much more as far as Madeline Albright is concerned, and her legacy that she had left behind. And despite the outpouring of tributes, despite the outpouring of fond remembrances of Madeline Albright, these issues will stand out. Innocent children, innocent babies that were killed, innocent people, 800,000 people in 100 days that were killed in Rwanda. And that is going to stick when one talks about the life of Madeline Albright and her legacy. The time is just headed for 8:30 a.m. We come back, we'll be joined by Dr. Angelique Coetzee. We're talking about Ramaphosa relaxing the rules, but also we're talking about the Delta Crown wave that is likely to arrive in April and May. She is the chairperson of the South African Medical Association.